Welcome to the third installment of our series on Vojnich's manuscript. Sit back and relax, or maybe make yourself a nice cup of coffee like I did. At the beginning I chose an illustration of this flower, which has a strange shape. Its stem twists into a spiral. You can see that after the spiral revival, smaller flowers grow and the spiral ends with one large flower. I put the picture deliberately because this shape has one sacral object. Not only the object we are going to show is inspired by the shapes of these wondrous plants. Plants are part of sacred architecture and are actually used as motifs to this day. You'll probably find most of them in Indian architecture. We'll be looking at sacred architecture in the next video and you'll probably be very surprised. Here we are looking at the subject in question. It's a bishop's staff. Note that it's decorated with flowers on the sides. Bishop's canes have different shapes and decorations, but they always express some spiritual agency or symbol. The spiral in this photo is in the shape of a snake. In the middle is the Lamb of God and the two beings seem to be arguing, or the serpent is attacking the lamb. Those of you who are watching the series will remember the illustration of the snakes moving in the roots of a flower and harming it. Here is a photo of another bishop's staff with altered decoration. On the perimeter of the spiral there are no flowers but leaves of a plant. A bird sits in the middle and again communicates with the snake. Both the bird and the lamb are spiritual beings. Human souls have animal forms in different cultures. You will see images of human souls most often in sacred objects. In European countries you will see birds and angels. In Egypt you will also see birds, but also bees. In hieroglyphic writing you will find them as symbols. Birds and bees can be seen in the Church of Saints Peter and Paul in the Vatican. The serpent represents matter and imprisons human souls in matter. The lion, which represents the spiritual side of man, fights against the serpent. The lion wrestling with the serpent often appears in illustrations and architecture. Here we are looking at the lion that is located on the side of the Charles Bridge in Prague. The lion is biting the snake. There are more lions on the Charles Bridge and they are not talked about much. If you ever visit the capital of the Czech Republic, be sure to visit this unique structure. Lions are not the only architectural decoration of the bridge. You will find statues of saints, the crucified Jesus Christ, as well as an eagle and the eternal light. The bridge connects the old and new town as a symbol of the transition from the old world to the new. Charles Square in the new town was built according to the plans of the city of Jerusalem by King Charles IV. Here we are looking at a statue of Saint George stabbing a dragon. This is exactly the same symbol as the lion fighting the serpent. The Bible describes the dragon as the biblical serpent. The figure of Saint George is a spiritual figure like the lion. Likewise, the dragon is the same spiritual being as the serpent. The Russian street George's ribbon is dedicated to Saint George, the spirit of the lion. The ribbon has been banned in some countries by political leaders. You probably already know we're fighting a spiritual war. Here is another depiction of Saint George from a medieval illustration, which unfortunately is not complete. Nevertheless, we see the seven-headed dragon as a seven-headed beast. A beast of seven spiritual beings. Note the colors in which it is depicted. These are the same colors used in Vojnich's handwriting, and the colors hide a secret. According to the Bible, there is a seven-headed beast on earth with the spiritual essence of a dragon or serpent. Then there is the seven-headed beast of the lion. And the last is the seven-headed beast, which is usually depicted as a leopard. This beast carries 10 heads, and this is the Kabbalistic cross. According to the Bible, these heads have inscriptions that insult God. These are all the bad human qualities that are ruling the world right now. The duel between the lion and the dragon was also painted by Leonardo da Vinci. As I mentioned, the dragon consists of 7 spiritual beings, just like the other 2 biblical beasts. I understand that you may be getting lost in this, but we can devote a future presentation to this. Notice in the picture how the head of the dragon bears a striking resemblance to the head of the serpent on the bishop's staff. But now we will return to Vojnich's manuscript and look at the other interesting illustrations. Women fall out of something and float through strange green areas that are interconnected. Here at the top of the illustration we see a pattern of pine cones from which something is flowing, and women are bathing in these streams. After taking this bath, the women probably travel through tubes to the next bath. But there's something going on in this spa. One woman is handling the blue paint and the other is handling the red paint. Several buckets are visible. The last bath is less pronounced in color, but blue seems to predominate. The women leave the bath through another tube at the bottom. Here we have some sort of system of tubes that resembles a disconnected water pipe. But notice the woman holding the cross above. This is probably the cross of life, but it has the same meaning as the Egyptian cross of life. We'll be looking at that later as well. The other woman is holding a circle. Like the Sumerian goddess Inanna, Ishtar holds a circle in both hands. The women continue to fall or travel through the tubes, and here at this point we seem to be looking at several holes. In the last video we saw the roots of some plants that look exactly like this. In the last bath, a mermaid appears, or a fish swallowing a woman. There are other spiritual beings in the form of animals. And here we have the tube slide one more time. Again, the conical shape appears here, but it is more like a tube at the top of the flower. The last bath is green again, and there is no other path leading from it. Another path comes at the top of the illustration and ends in another pool. This one is weird. It has some blue windows. An approximately similar flower shape can be seen in the decoration of an Indian temple, which we will see next. This illustration is significant because it determines our next line of inquiry. Above you see pine cones held by Sumerian gods or angels. They seem to be pouring or sprinkling something into the flowers or roots. Here it looks like something is actually flowing from the cones to the roots, from the roots to the whole plant and to the leaves in which the women bathe. Our material understanding of the world can hardly imagine the spiritual events of these plants. They can grow from ceilings and from the walls of underground landscapes. They can be impressive, larger than the flowers we know. And it doesn't have to be material at all, but energetic. Here is the top of the tube that something flows into the flower. Here is the top of the pipe that something is flowing into the flower. On the right side, what looks like tubes appear with a tip at the top of the flower. Women shower in these streams. All spas are connected. It should be remembered that we are still talking about female energy orbs. And here we stop for a moment. Before we continue looking at the other illustrations, I just want to clarify the following fact. Women bathing in plants are probably getting something from the plant. It may be related to prokaryote, which is the oldest cellular organism. It appeared on Earth approximately 3.5 billion years ago. Prokaryotes evolved into eukaryotes, and eukaryotes became part of the human mitochondrion. Mitochondria are found in the human cell and function as a power plant. Without them, our body would not be able to move, breathe. Blood circulation or the immune system would not work. Mitochondria are inherited only from the mother and are related to our reproductive system. Since this is a large topic, we will cover it in some of the next parts of this series. The following illustrations are circle diagrams and zodiac signs. This one is under the sign of fish. Here on the inner circle you see the women coming out of the vertically placed pipes. They could be the roots of the plant, as all the tubes also have the same pattern. On the outer circle, women emerge from vertical tubes, and each tube has a different pattern. I believe these are the tubes at the top of the flowers. Each patterned differently based on the shape of the plant. The fact that the tips of the tubes are missing here is probably related to the author's intention to paint women. Some women look like they are pregnant, but it is better to see it in other illustrations. Every woman is accompanied by a star. Women are carriers of the Argentum Astrum star fire, which is very likely related to human mitochondria. As I mentioned earlier, mitochondria are inherited from the mother. This starfire may very likely come from the cones of the Sumerian angels. Here we are looking at the sign of Capricorn, and something has changed here. The women in the middle circle emerge from the vertical pipes in the same manner as the women in the outer circle. Each of the tubes has a different pattern and probably belongs to a different flower. Some women have enlarged bellies and wear a star. Capricorn eats a plant here. Women in some ancient cultures were depicted as deer, the doe that feeds from the tree of life. In this picture, the situation is completely different. Women no longer come out of tubes, but seem to have gone through a whole cycle of transformation and are free. These are the floating orbs that leave the mother flower. In the center of the diagram we see the sign of scales. I thought the flowers throwing out these energy balls must be star constellations, but now I'm not sure. But marine corals expel their brood at certain lunar phases. The moon is also related to the feminine principle. Here we have a very interesting illustration, especially on the left side. In the center is not the sun, but an energy ball that leaves the flower. Note the colors of the flower: blue, red, white. The stars come into bloom like starfire from angel cones. The diagram reminded me of the American flag with the stars, blue field and red stripes. Is it a coincidence? The diagram could refer to a flower similar to this one. You will understand the whole situation in this picture. We see 4 angels, 2 of them are winged and hold a cone. In the middle is the earth like a biblical mountain of flowers. The flowers are intertwined and connected. Remember Bloomberg, mountain of flower? And we're back to the shape of the earth. Its shape also resembles bell, lingam and other sacred objects. Above the ground we see a winged circle with an angel inside. This is our sun. Cones send the keys of life to flowers just as the sun sends them. The sun is a spiritual being and you can forget all the lies that have become the so-called truth. Nor do keys fall from the sun in the literal sense of the word as we know them. Let's see what lies beneath the sand in some of the world's deserts. These are scans of the Taklamakan Desert, the Sahara and images from the Saudi Arabian desert areas. In order for sand to form dunes, it needs an obstacle in its path. The obstacle is these huge and bizarre limestone formations that resemble a snakeskin or a cone. After a short trip to the deserts, we will return to the manuscript. In the diagram on the right, we can already see plowing in a circle. It resembles the phase of the moon, and as you already know, the moon is a feminine attribute. The center of the illustration resembles the center of a flower. The right illustration again has stars as starfire and an orb with a face that has rays. As we've seen, these orbs actually glow slightly. And here are the flowers from which the orbs fly. Notice the glow. In the lower left corner, the orbs are connected for some reason. And again the blue, red and green colors. In the next part we have 3 diagrams and apparently they are flowers again. We have already seen the flower on the left and the petals resemble tubes. On the right side there is again an interesting blue flower. An orb flies out from its center. I thought about this diagram for a long time, but it is definitely not a map. Here we have flowers again and a diagram of the path that energy orbs take. Here you see one of the tubes with a tip that seems to point the way. It seems as if the orbs pass from one flower to another. In the upper left corner we see the sun, but it is not very visible. Even the sun has its share in the origin of life, but I believe that in this case it is again an energetic particle that shines. The next flower even has a castle painted on it, but it can again be a tube with a tip, only in this castle design. We see strange formations next to it, and it could perhaps be a current of air that propels the orbs on their way. That just occurred to me, but it could be something else. In the middle diagram we see tubes with a tip again, but notice that the tip has a bulge, as if the orb was just about to be born. This shape can also be seen in architecture. There's another sun down here in the corner, but maybe it will be the real sun. Note the diagram that is bordered by a pine cone pattern. Maybe it's the limestone formations in the deserts we saw. The sun sends its keys of life to the deserts. What do you think? On the perimeter of the middle diagram we see some kind of tubes that resemble the roots of some plants. If female orbs, or souls, come into existence this way, where do men come from? Let's take another look at the different shapes of flower tubes. Some have spikes and some don't. In the previous illustration, we saw their tips bulged. And here are the men. Gentlemen on the left and ladies on the right. Ladies have it figured out. They come from flowers. Here it is in the middle of the sun. Lords come in the form of light from the sun. Ladies represent one key of life and gentlemen the other key of life. Later we will show it on the Egyptian frescoes and you will find that there is actually no history of Egypt. Photograph of a Sumerian stele, some orb emerging from a flower. He is assisted by two angels. To make it more clear, I prepared this Masonic illustration. In the upper part we see the zodiac, which is lined with stars. In the middle are magical symbols. In the lower left is a woman who is tied to the zodiac. The woman's attribute is the moon, water and earth, and her spiritual attribute is the eagle. Next to it stands an animal in the form of a deer. But the woman used to be depicted more like a doe. The moon connects the woman with the doe. He stands to his right and is bound with the zodiac. The attribute of man is sun, fire and air. The spiritual being is the eagle, here is the phoenix. Next to it stands a lion as another spiritual figure and connected to the man through the sun. In the middle is probably depicted Hermes Trismegistos, whom we know as Thoth. At his feet are two lions, the spiritual form of a man and a woman. Together they form a two-headed lion. Likewise, the two eagles, male and female, form a double-headed eagle. In other words, very common state symbols. Above the zodiac we see a firmament with angels. A halo dove flies to the right. The dove in the story of Noah is his personification. But the plant that the dove brings does not mean a completely new land, but above all a new form of life. Laurels and other climbing plants in ancient cultures were symbols of life energy. On the left side we see the Lamb of God, which carries the cross of life. The woman in one illustration of Vojnich's manuscript was holding the same one. I leave you with this illustration. On the left you see a dead person. On the right, the body is no longer visible. His soul has entered the light and is leaving. The remains of the body disappear like dust over time. Our body is only temporary. Notice the symbol at the top left. It is a Sumerian winged circle, a symbol for the spiritual side of our lives. You really have nothing to fear because you have received a great gift. Everything else is fleeting and petty. And it is up to you whether you can break free from the serpent's temptations of this world and embrace this new spiritual side of you. Have a great time and see you next time.